a WFSB Plus original. This is the Capitol Rundown.
Welcome to the Capitol Rundown, where we discuss politics from both sides of the aisle. I'm Kara Sundlin, and for the Democrats, we have Democratic strategist Jimmy Tickey, and for the Republicans, former House Leader Themis Klarides. And we're going to talk about all the big issues, and I love having it from both sides of the aisle because we can help everyone at home understand and also make sure that we're showing how people can get along, which is another purpose of this show. Dialogue. Look, you guys actually like each other.
We do. That you can actually disagree without thinking somebody's bad or evil or wrong.
We need probably a little more in that, because our first topic is division. And that is that there's so much division in America right now. And we've got all kinds of examples of this. From the White House, there used to be a dinner where all Republicans and Democrats got together. President Trump has said, I'm not inviting some folks. The National Governors Association, Republicans and Democrats have always gotten together. Now, I guess we're not going to do that. We're just going to have all the Republicans together. Let's just speak to the division right now. Is this normal? Are we really a lot more divided than we've ever been, or it just feels that way? Themis, let's start with you.
Well, this National Governors Association that you're speaking of, it's what it sounds like. It's all the governors of the United States, Republican and Democrat, and it's tradition. And as far as I can find, it has never changed that all the governors are invited to the White House to discuss policy and things that are going on in their states, and what they can do to work together, et cetera. And this year, the president decided, I'm not inviting the Democrat governors, which is, I hate to say it, but it's your typical childishness, that he engages in oftentimes. So then he planned a separate dinner for all the governors except the governor from Maryland and the governor from Colorado, because those happen to be the two governors he's actively brawling with right now. Okay. And because we all know there's other governors he doesn't get along with, but he didn't not invite them. So 18 Democrat governors then said, we're boycotting this. We're not doing this. This isn't right. And so now I don't know what's going to happen. It's in the next few days. Again, I understand there is plenty of times to be partisan. Jimmy's partisan at times. I'm partisan at times. You take your positions, but this is not one of them. And so the picking and choosing your battles adage, I think, really applies here, that he should pick and choose his battles.
Jimmy, are we more than divided than ever? I know we're all kind of young to say ever, but it feels very divided.
It does feel it, doesn't it? I mean, I think sometimes maybe among social media or among people who never leave cable news, maybe they're constantly surrounded by it. But boy, doesn't it feel like we're divided more than we used to be. You used to have a campaign, and then the campaign would stop, and then someone would actually go into office, and then they would govern. And by governing, they would actually develop partnerships and not be so partisan. But particularly with this president, he really doesn't want to surround himself with anyone other than those who praise him 100% completely and totally all the time. And we've seen that time and time again. And as Themis was saying, this is usually a dinner that happens annually with all governors, because it's a governmental function. It is all governors getting together with the president to talk about areas of coordination, collaboration, how the feds can help the states, and kind of that link between state and federal government. And this president, time and time again, anyone who says one word, even if it's constructive criticism, he cannot handle it. So he disinvited them from the dinner. And ultimately, we're only as strong as how we act. And if he's already starting to pick and choose Democratic governors he doesn't want around the table, who's to say that it wouldn't change over the coming days? So all the Democratic governors said, you know what, it's off then. So the dinner is off. We're not going to meet with someone who's picking and choosing who he's going to meet with. This was supposed to be a collaborative effort where the president is meeting with governors. That has always happened. And there have been presidents in the past people have disagreed with. They've always come together to work with governors. But this president really chooses favorites and chooses people he wants to brawl with. And it makes only the division even worse. And those who do support this president believe what he says, even when it's wrong and it's not factual, and that is not helpful for democracy or for our discourse.
Interesting. So the dinner's off from the Democrats' perspective.
The Democrats are not attending, the dinner.
Okay. So let's move on to the government shutdown, because we have a partial government shutdown again. If you're flying out of Bradley, you might notice there's some longer TSA is not being paid again. We've had a woman that we just interviewed yesterday who said she's starting to ask for the wheelchair because she knew she couldn't stand so long. And this has been happening a lot. So we have a government shutdown. This time, correct me if I'm wrong, the big issues are how ICE is going to behave. But we're here again. What's the latest? Are we going to get ourselves out of this, or what's next for this? Bring us to where we are right now, Themis.
Well, it started Saturday at midnight, Friday night at midnight into Saturday. And the things that are affected the most are, remember, Homeland Security, we have TSA, we have the Coast Guard, we have FEMA, ICE, Border Patrol, and the list goes on. But the interesting part of it is ICE and the Border Patrol aren't affected that much because they were funded with tens of billions of dollars in the big bill, the big budget bill last year that the Congress put forward and the president signed. But the problem is that they can't agree. The Republicans and Democrats can't agree, and that's why we have this. And the Democrats want more what they call safeguards as far as how ICE is operating. They want masks to be off. They want to be able to have judicial warrants. So you can't just go, ICE can't go in. They want a judge to be able to sign off on it. They want body cameras. Now, listen, the Republicans have already said, we think body cameras are okay. We don't think masks should be taken off only because they have to protect themselves too. The real problem here is we had 2 deaths which were completely unacceptable, and people are now really paying attention to this. And the issue is these people have to be trained properly. Their training went down from 5 months to 1 or 2 months. That's not enough time. You wouldn't expect your police officers to be trained for only 1 or 2 months before they went out on the street and had to deal with important issues. So they need to be trained properly, and they have to be going after the proper people. And until that happens, this is going to continue. And I don't know what it's going to take. The Democrats put a proposal back on the table yesterday, including the things that I said. The Republicans said, that's a non-starter. They're not even in session now, so they don't come back till next week. So, we'll see what happens. But I will be at Bradley Airport today, so I'll be able to report next week to see what's going on with TSA. The issue with TSA is that 95% of TSA workers are mandated. They have to go to work, and they don't get paid.
Without pay.
And they don't get paid. And the scary part of it is, every day it'll get worse. The first couple of days it was probably fine, but if this goes on longer, they don't get paid, so they'll start working other jobs to get paid. So they will call in sick and not show up. And then 5 weeks, back in the fall, they didn't work for 5 weeks, so they're probably still suffering from not getting paid, at the time that they actually did the work. So it's just snowballing, and it's not good for anyone.
Before I move on to Jimmy, you mentioned that it was a non-starter for the Republicans. Obviously, you are a Republican. Do you foresee Republicans starting to break ranks or starting to join in compromise, or were you going to stay in this division?
Well, let's just add in, it's an election year in November. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. Remember, the entire House of Representatives in Washington, 435 people are up for re-election. There's 35 senators up for re-election, and there's 39 governors in the country up for re-election. People are starting to pay attention to that. You could live in a district that doesn't like that that's going on, and you're going to say to yourself, well, I need to get reelected. I can't just be blindly loyal to an administration because they're digging their heels in. So I think you're going to see, we've seen some movement. I think you're going to see a lot more movement. But as I mentioned before, body cameras, I know that Senator Thune, the leader in the Senate, was supportive of body cameras. He expressed that he was, at least. So I think they're going to have to move forward with this sooner than later.
Jimmy, the Democrats are putting their feet down, putting their heels down. We're gonna not compromise until we get A, B, or C. Where do you see this going?
Well, I see Republicans that are actually saying, you know what, okay, we are agreeing with you on some points, and that's good. We have said for months and over the last couple of weeks, we want body cameras on these ICE agents, masks off. We want some restrictions to be put onto these kind of roving campuses that just go into communities, cause chaos, cause harm, escalate matters. They don't help matters at all. To take a look at more policies around warrants and warrants being needed for some of the actions that they engage in. And so Democrats put up a proposal to said, let's figure something out. We need deep, deep reforms with Donald Trump's ICE. Keep in mind, ICE is a fairly new agency from a federal government perspective, but it had been existing under, President Obama, who had actually more deportations than President Trump, but they were targeted. They went after actual criminals, violent criminals, people who many would agree to say, you know what, those are people that should be addressed. But what we've seen under Donald Trump's ICE is total chaos, roving among communities. We've seen American deaths. We need major, major reforms. And Democrats are not going to support funding this agency if we don't see major reforms to this particular agency. It's all under DHS, and so DHS does include TSA, as you say. And so we are going to see potentially some longer lines over the coming days. They would miss their first paycheck at the end of February. So the hope is that with Congress not being in session this week, but coming back next week, let's see what we can compromise on. Hopefully Republicans will come to the table to see what are some of these measures that we could agree to for then formula funding, which is important to the airports and to DHS and also to FEMA as well, which is our emergency response as well.
I think the key word to that is compromise. That means the Democrats put all these things on the table. That doesn't mean the Republicans need to agree to every single thing. They need to compromise and agree to some things and then accept that some things will not be agreed upon because we need to get government moving in. But let's remember, Jimmy mentioned, and we've talked about this before, how President Obama deported more people than President Trump has thus far. You get brought back into, and this is, I'm excluding this TV station, but the bias of the media that didn't cover it as much, right? Donald Trump, if he changes his hair part, it's a news story, right? And I have certainly been critical of many of the things that he's done as a Republican, and I've said I liked a lot of his policies. I just don't necessarily like how he does them. But there is no question that of all those deportations that were done, there is under President Obama, they were not all done with like the worst of the worst of the worst. They started at the worst, the criminals, people that shouldn't be here, and started moving down the line. That's a lot of deportations to do with nobody really talking about it. So the unfairness and the bias in how Republicans and Democrats are handled by the media is also pretty obvious there.
CBS News did a study of all those that have been rounded up by the Trump administration, and 14% had serious crimes against them. All the others were parents, kids, people that should have never been addressed by ICE, just creating havoc in communities, vans roaming around collecting people erroneously, not a targeted operation, a total mess.
And what percentage of Obama's were those?
Much more.
But we just don't know the number.
I don't have it offhand, but a much more targeted approach, working with local and state police to say, this is an individual we're looking at. Let's be thoughtful and have an approach to go after those criminals, whereas Trump has just created complete chaos in the streets and escalated matters.
And that goes to training too, right? That's why they need
Let me just ask,
more
you mentioned
training.
the training. It also seems President Trump, regardless of what you think about, is a master marketer, right? That's his background. He knows how to get a message out there. And there has been, from the very beginning, Kristi Noem on all of the television stations, and this very in-your-face, want to show you how tough we're being. Did that approach work? They're clearly scaling back.
Well, here's the problem. This last presidential election was, for the first time that I can remember, not about the economy. Right, not about the money in your pocket, meaning it wasn't the number one issue. Because of President Biden's lack of any action whatsoever in regards to the border, and not only that, but just basically opening it up and letting people come in. Whoever was president right now, Republican, Democrat, Trump, somebody else, they would have to deal with this. So Trump is dealing with it this way. And people actually, when that becomes the number one issue, it was so interesting to me because it became so obvious to your everyday person, Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated voters. And so they did have to, I think it worked for them. I think it worked for them in the election, no question, during the campaign. I think it worked for them when they first started. I think we're getting to the point now where people are starting to say, okay, listen, I think people should only be here if they should legally be here. Okay, I agree with that. And I certainly we have to focus on the people that are most dangerous to deport. Agree with that. But it seems a little bit like a cowboy organization here.
Well, there are definitely people saying, I don't
how
vote
they're
for
doing
that.
it, they think, he's a master of marketing, but it's not being marketed well right now. Like the marketing, I think he's losing the marketing right now.
Well, and the poll numbers are saying that, right? So 34% down. That's what 34%. That is low historically. Jimmy, I know you're going to say that there's, I can guess, and I want you to be able to comment, but 34%, if your president is at 34% for your party, is that a problem for the Republican midterms?
Well, it's not good. You know, I mean, he was at 34%. And when you look at the different polls, they're anywhere from 34, I think, to 41%. So none of them are great numbers by any stretch of the imagination. He was at 34% in 2021 when he left office. But this is the lowest beside, I mean, Truman was 32%, George W. Bush and President Carter were at 34%. So this is one of the lowest we've seen of a president's approval rating. However, you also have money that we've talked about many times with campaigns and how money matters, and especially these national elections. And the Republican National Committee has, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, and the Democrat National Committee has loans they're still paying, and all the caucuses, you know, the Senate Republicans, the House Republicans, the Senate Democrats, the House Democrats, they all raise money in their PACs and the super PACs. There's a lot of money in there, and that will help. But right now, clearly, a 34% approval rating or a 38% approval rating is not good, and it's going to hurt Republicans if they don't deal with it in a way that is beneficial to their district and their race.
And Jimmy, the midterms are going to be coming.
Yes.
So obviously Democrats are preparing for that. They are predicting that they could really make some inroads. How will these approval ratings play into the midterms?
Yeah, every president, other than 2 instances, has lost seats in Congress in their first midterm, and so it's already looking like a good environment for Democrats. But we're not celebrating too early, because we've done that in the past. This has been a lot of hard work to make sure we have really great candidates this year, supporting those candidates that are on the ballot. The president is one of the most unpopular presidents in American history so far. He's at 34%. We'll see where it goes from there, perhaps only down from there. You know, he ran on affordability, then he got in office and said affordability was a hoax. He's really done nothing to address affordability issues for people. He's created havoc in the streets, and I don't think he's really paid attention to the American people and what they were looking for. And you see this lawlessness that's happening. Yes, special interests, of course, and billionaires are going to curry favor and donate to their campaign coffers. But when you are that low, and when you do not have a track record, and this midterm election is just a couple months away, I think you are looking at a really good night for Democrats if we continue to be out there, talk to people, engage with people in their communities about the issues that are at stake. We need a check on this president. He has the Senate and he has the House of Representatives. And even though he is unpopular with the American people, he still is very popular within his own party, because increasingly over the last 10 years, the Republican Party has been taken over by many of his own supporters and folks who identify with MAGA. So while he may not be popular to the general electorate, he absolutely has power in a Republican electorate. And so that is for the Republican Party to work on and to figure out. But when we speak to a wide electorate, people are not satisfied with the job he is doing as president.
And remember, the average number of seats that are lost by a president's party in the midterms is 25. That's the average. Right now, there's 51 House members that have announced they're not running at all. Okay, the average is around 43. So a lot of people aren't running. So there'll be a lot of open seats that would be up for grabs for, you know, both parties. And if he lost the half, let's just say if the average is 25 seats lost, if he lost half of those, if he lost 12, the Democrats would be in a decent amount of control, because they only need to flip 3 seats to get a majority.
It's getting closer and closer.
The Republicans only have a 3-seat majority right now, so it's absolutely doable for Democrats to take back the House this November.
So we had the whole we still are in the middle of what should be done about the Epstein files. The last I read, the government says they've released everything they needed to with compliance of the laws. We watched a very chaotic and combative hearing where Pam Bondi basically tended to deflect and not want to talk about what she was being questioned for. That obviously seemed like a strategy. But do these Epstein files, do they matter to the American people? Do you think more needs to come out? Are we actually being transparent here? And is this affecting the midterms, the polls, everything? How big of a deal is it?
I think your average person believes that they should let the files come out, redact the names of the actual victims, and then people can make their own decisions, which I agree with. Representative Tom Massey, who's a Republican, and Representative Ro Khanna, who's a Democrat, they put together this Epstein Files Transparency Act, which forced the Department of Justice to bring these out. They're saying, though, even though Justice is saying, we've done 3 million documents, all these things have come out, what they want is they want notes and emails of how they decided to prosecute people, and just as importantly, how they decided not to prosecute people.
Because not just the random files, but
why?
What did the investigators
They are
say?
claiming that that's part of that act, part of that law, and they have, because they are able, because they're congressmen, they were able to look through these files, and they say, based on what they saw, there are some were over-redacted and some were under-redacted. But either way, it was not an accurate representation, and I think generally speaking, it looks like Justice did not do this in the right way. And the fact that Pam Bondi came into that hearing with a list of names to call certain representatives was just unprofessional at best, right? It was inappropriate. But I have to say, I saw Democrats on that committee who embarrassed themselves too. The whole thing was an embarrassment. There's a congresswoman from New Jersey that basically said to the acting, border, the guy that's in charge of the border, Lyons, he said, so are you a religious man? What do you think is going to happen to you on Judgment Day with blood on your hands? Are you going to hell? That's inappropriate. I will just tell you, as somebody who's in the legislature in Connecticut for 22 years, we've had some very heated hearings in the Judiciary Committee, et cetera. If anybody ever said that, anybody, Republican, Democrat, the chairman would have just shut that down. It's not okay. We as voters vote for people, and at the very least expect them to be adults.
Rules of decorum.
And appropriate,
yeah.
Right? Be as tough as you want, but it was inappropriate on both sides, and it was really, it was sad for me to watch because I think it was embarrassment for our democracy.
What do you think, Jimmy? Is a lot more being hidden from us in the Epstein files?
Well, we don't know what we don't know, and with so many pages redacted, perhaps. I mean, Pam Bondi is an embarrassment. She seemed to channel her inner Trump. She was just hurling accusations, name-calling, not answering any questions, wouldn't even face Epstein survivors that were there in the room. And so you don't know when you don't know what you're dealing with something like this. Now, it's been publicly reported that some members of Congress have been given access to the documents that are not redacted, but they should be releasing the documents and just redacting the information that would, of course, be important to the survivors and to the victims of it, to make sure they redact their information. But otherwise, the files are out there, and Pam Bondi's performance was really terrible, a terrible representation of the Department of Justice, and it seems like she was, if anything, deflecting to protect the president,
but
who
do
she
you
works
think
for.
she was playing to him? I think she was playing to him.
Yes, the Attorney General was playing to Trump because she works for Trump,
and she was trying to impress him.
Trump
See, I'm tough like you, and I can name call like you, and I can do.
And he's never wanted these files released.
The sad part of it is
he has never wanted these files released, and so there's more there that she has acted in a way to just try to not answer and to protect the president.
Well, we'll see what happens. We know the Clintons are going to be on the stand. They've asked for it to be open, and certainly Bill Clinton's name is in those files
after they
as well.
said they wouldn't do it.
So we'll see the big question of, how much. It's clear that the Epstein network has spread into every part of every industry all over the world. Interesting that places in Europe, a lot more people are resigning, and here we don't tend to have that reaction. But I want to switch to, because we have more things to get to, that there's an executive order that's being talked about that President Trump would require ID at the elections. And this is something that John Decker, our reporter nationally for Gray, who travels frequently with the president, definitely noted for his bipartisan covering. But even he, in our conversation on Eyewitness News, was saying this executive order would likely end up in the courts. I want to start with you. You're a lawyer. We can't have an executive order to require ID at election. And some people are going to say, what's the big deal? Why can't you bring your ID to the elections?
Okay. Well, let me first say, I've always supported having a photo ID to vote.
Okay.
I have. I mean, in Connecticut, for example, our law says you have to bring a Social Security card, which also doesn't have a photo in it, or an identification card, like a pre-printed identification card that has either your name and address, or your name and photo, or your name and signature but not all of them. And then if you don't have any of those, you just have to sign something that says, yes, I live at this address, which nobody ever checks. Okay, so, I mean, literally you can go and vote in Connecticut and bring a utility company bill with somebody's name on it that says I live at 25 Smith Street, and you can vote in that town. And who's going to check that? So, I mean, I support it, but this executive, order to do it is ridiculous. I mean, I wouldn't even think that's not even a constitutional thing he can do. And you're right; it would be locked up in court all along the way. So I think that's just ridiculous.
Is it a bigger fear about nationalizing elections?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, keep in mind everything that we're discussing right now, it's all a part of a program. President is looking at these poll numbers. He is looking at the midterms. They can already tell things are not going to go well. So what do? You then change the rules of the game. And so this legislation that's moving through Congress would require a birth certificate or a passport in order to vote. 50% of the American people don't even have a passport. Many people don't have their birth certificate readily available. And for married women, the birth certificate would not match your birth name, which this legislation would call into question.
Don't you just have a driver's license, though?
Under the legislation that they're pushing, it would require passports or birth certificates, so much stricter than what many states already have. So yes, it moves you to this conversation around a national election, which has never been the case in this country. What's the greatest thing about our elections in this country is that they are decentralized, that you may know your register of voters because they're from your town. There's a Republican and a Democrat, and those bipartisan register of voters handle your local elections with your city clerk. In Connecticut, we've got elections that are done by the town level, and that's the case across the country, that local operators are the ones that handle your elections. They are your friends and neighbors. They care about your local community. So this effort to nationalize an election is worrisome. I don't think it'll get passed in the Congress, and if he goes to an executive order, we will beat it in the courts.
And by the way, that's in the Constitution.
It's in the Constitution.
So we're going to switch it back and bring it back to the basketball capital of the world, okay? Because we've talked about a lot of things, but we can't end the Capitol Rundown without talking about Dan Hurley, who said, why are there not enough people here at this Georgetown game? And that, for the basketball capital of the world, the stands should be packed. I know that they've mediated. They've now, they did some listening, and students who said they were coming or not coming can now give their tickets to another student. But in the final 2 minutes we have, is this I thought we were should more people be showing up, or is there a systemic problem here?
Well, I mean, you would think that they're a gamble. I mean, they go to
Valentine's Day.
They go to school there. They could just walk there, right? But I will just say this. My favorite UConn Husky is Dan Hurley. Okay. I love that guy. He is passionate. He loves those kids. He loves that program. He loves that school. People, he gets himself very hot, and he's mouthy. And that's what you want in a sports coach. You want somebody that is so engaged and, sometimes goes over the top. He does. But you know what? That
he was very calm.
Shows how much
but maybe we do need better.
Yes,
and you know what? And you know what else I think? I think we are so used to being great that some people start taking it for granted. Okay. And I will say this. Don't take things for granted just because you've been good for a long time, because that can change. And then all you'll be doing is complaining. Why would I want to go to a game because they're not winning? They're winning. It's your school. You go there and cheer them on.
Right. We got to support our UConn Huskies. So go out to a game. Make it a night. Make it a night out or a day out, and go out and support our UConn Huskies.
Yeah. All right.
So fill those seats.
Fill those seats.
Fill those seats.
At Gamble Pavilion. Yes. Well, I mean, I think he had no choice but not to say something, because the Georgetown coach sort of ribbed him and said, I thought this was the basketball capital of the world.
Come on, we got to be proud of our basketball here in Connecticut.
They also know they can get him riled up in a second. So, Coach Hurley, keep doing what you're doing.
Okay. All right. Themis is voting for the riling up.
I am.
Just not in Congress.
Right, no. Well, you can be riled up. You just you're not rude to each other. Those are two different things.
All right. Themis, Klarides, Jimmy, Tickey, thank you so much. This is the Capitol Rundown. Thanks for streaming on WFSB+. Also find us on WFSB.com. Just click on local news and you can watch us Saturday mornings on the Wax as well. We'll get you all informed about the issues that matter to you from both sides of the aisle.